Cue the music, Bob. Wait, Bob, hold on. That is the Imperial music from Star Wars. Wrong thing. I told you to play the music of the Republic. Oh, I got you, boss. Sorry, wrong thing. Whoa, Bob, come on. That is the Republic's music from Star Wars, not Star Wars. I want the music of the Republic. Oh, my bad, boss. My bad, boss. I think I got it this time, boss. All right, here we go. And that is the music of the Republic of the United States of America. All right, so today we will be talking about the beginnings of the United States. What makes the United States the United States? Now, some people could tell you it's the people, it's, the land mass. Well, one thing that's allowed the United States to be the United States is the Constitution. And so we're going to talk about how our forefathers framed the Constitution. Okay? So there were 55 delegates from 12 of the 13 states. Rhode Island didn't show up. They met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Uh, Everyone realized the Articles of Confederation. All right, these just ain't working. We got to get rid of them. Because this meeting was originally called to revise the Articles. But these wise men, when they got there, was like, y'all, dog, this document just ain't working. I ain't feeling it. You know what I'm saying? So they got together and they wrote up what is now called the Constitution. Notable attendees: George Washington, Ben Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. These are known as the framers. Okay, these are the men who wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Hold up, wait a minute. There'd be a problem in it. All right, so uh, there was a lot of problems. You had men from the north, men from the south, men from small states, from large states. So there was a huge debate over several issues. One of those issues was how much power to give the states and how much power to give the federal central government. Uh, Too much power to states, then the central government was weak, just like the Articles of Confederation. They didn't have enough powers to hold the states together and to protect the whole country. But if you gave it too much power, they felt like they were just going back into what they just got out of with Parliament in England. And so they didn't want to be ruled by a body as strong as Parliament, yet they needed something stronger than the Articles of Confederation. So this was one debate. Small versus large states. Large states wanted the vote to be based on population. And it's because they have more population than anybody else because they're so large. Because imagine, look at today. If you go to California or Texas, if we just went solely on population, those states would dominate most of the rest of the country. Um, certain, or New York would dominate, because these are some huge population centers. Small states wanted all of them to have an equal vote. Now, the problem with that for the large states was that, well, there might be 10,000 people in Rhode Island. But so should they have as big of a say as me in New York and I got 10 million people? And then there was slavery. It was the issue of what to do about slavery. Should we allow slavery? Uh, where do we allow it? And so forth. And there was actually several issues under slavery. All right, the Virginia versus the New Jersey plans. There were two plans that surfaced to help answer these questions, and that was the Virginia and the New Jersey. The Virginia plan offered a bicameral house, which is two houses of Congress, just like Parliament, the House of Lords and House of Commons. Congress elected the president. Congress could veto state laws, and a number of representatives based on population size. So small states right there by that last one was like, whoa, hold up, we ain't feeling that one. No, no, no. So there was the New Jersey plan, which was a smaller state. It had a unicameral house, one house of Congress, a number of representatives equal for all the states. Several executives instead of president, so there was, like several heads, kind of like the president's cabinet now, would be the head instead of a president. Uh, State governors could vote to recall the executives if the executives weren't doing what they should. So there was what was known as the Great Compromise. A cat by the name of Roger Sherman of Connecticut proposed this. And it's also referred to as the Connecticut Compromise, but most times you'll hear it as the Great Compromise. Um, they were going to make a bicameral house. That means two houses. The upper house was going to be based on equal representation. And that's what we call our Senate. And the lower house is going to be based on population. That's what we call the House of Representatives. Um, so uh, that's how that worked out. Who counts in the population? Well, that's a good question, and that's something that's going to be answered here in a minute for us to talk about. But we now have this formed our Congress that we have today. The Three-Fifths Compromise. This is where we talked about who should count. The South said yes, slaves should count in our population. The North said no, they're your property, they're slaves. You argue that they're property, so they shouldn't have a vote. So the agreement came down to 3 out of every 5 slaves would count in populations. That's why it's known as the three-fifths. A slave counted as 3/5 of a man. So for every 5 you had, it counted as 3 population. The Constitution. It was completed and signed September 17th, 1787 by the framers. Now it had to be ratified. And ratification means that it had to be agreed on, and it said, inside the Constitution it says what ratification would be. 9 of the 13 states. So you can see the 13 states at the time, and 9 of them ratify it. Um, that led to people taking sides, Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. Uh, so if you were in support of the Constitution, you were a Federalist. And some known Federalists were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay. And if you opposed it, you were an anti-Federalist. You were in Federalist, you're against this central federal government. Um, so anti-Federalists opposed it, and some of these were Patrick Henry, James Monroe, Samuel Adams. So there were big founding fathers on either side of this who some agreed and some disagreed with this new constitution. The Federalists, they wanted a strong central government. They knew the Articles were too weak to govern the new country. That's why the Articles of Confederation was constantly having various problems. They were afraid that the current Constitution that had Articles of Confederation would lead to a civil war between the states because different states would do things and they didn't have the power to regulate the problems in between different states due to money, due to taxing outside of each other's borders, and so forth. Um, Articles had been approved by the state legislators. the people would ratify the constitutions. Right? And the Anti-Federalists, they opposed a strong central government. They were afraid that things would be like they were when they were under the rule of England. Um, they wanted states to have more powers because if the states had more powers, that would keep the strong federal government from dictating everything. Um, and they were one of the big concerns was there was no Bill of Rights. They were used to this English Bill of Rights or the Englishman's rights, and they wanted these rights to be protected, so there was no doubt that they had them and that nobody could take them away. And they also felt a president was too similar to a king. It was one person who had a whole lot of power. Our the framers and all our forefathers would probably freak out if they saw how our government is today. The Federalist Papers. It was a series of letters written to newspapers under a pseudonym of Publius, who was a leader during the Roman Republic. They argued the points back and forth with the Anti-Federalists about the government that should be in America. So they would post something as in an editorial and it would be out in the paper, and the Anti-Federalists would respond. And these debates through newspapers are still considered some of the major writings on American government. So just to give you one here, what do you think? Is this a Federalist or Anti-Federalist? If you adopt this government, you will incline to an arbitrary and odious aristocracy or monarchy. It is a very important objection to this government that the representation consists of so few. Too few to resist the influence of corruption and the temptation to treachery against which all governments ought to take precautions. So do you think that is Federalists or Anti-Federalists? Well, let's look at this one. A feeble executive implies a feeble execution of government. A feeble execution is but another phrase for a bad execution. And a government ill executed, whatever may be its theory, must be in practice a bad government. So this first one is an Anti-Federalist statement, and the second one a Federalist statement. So these are some of the things that were said throughout the Federalist Papers. It was stuck. So many states had ratified it, but not everybody, and a lot of the large states were holding out. And so it kind of got bogged down and locked in a draw. Massachusetts and several other states. Some were for it, some were against it, and they couldn't ever decide which way. John Adams and John Hancock worked out a new compromise in Massachusetts. Massachusetts would ratify it, but only if it was amended with individual rights. And this is what we call the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and those were written by James Madison. People sent in a ton of different things of what they thought and suggestions, and he took these hundreds of suggestions and molded them down to 10 or 10 amendments, which would be the Bill of Rights. June 21st, 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify, technically making it go into effect. Remember, it only needed 9 of the 13 states. New York and Virginia had not signed it yet. July 2nd, Virginia signed, and New York, hearing that Virginia signed, caved in and voted to ratify. And on November 1st, 1778, a republic is born. And why do I have the Roman stuff there? Because if you know back to history, that was one of the greatest republics of all time, was the Roman Republic. Lasted 500 years. Congress under the Articles of Confederation met and chose New York City as the capital of this new country. And then it dissolved itself. On March 4th, 1789, the first Congress of the United States met and began its session. April 30th of that session, Washington was sworn in as a president. So until next time, deuces!